Hola, me llamo Michaela Harwell. Hoy es el 7 de julio y estoy en la clase de español 2311. An usted command is commonly used to advise or direct someone. To create an usted command, you must adjust the verb of the sentence. For an AR verb, conjugate it to the yo form and simply change the O to an E. This same model is used to create an ustedes command, which is an order intended for multiple people. In this case, follow the same form used to create an usted command, except replace the O ending with an N. An example of this can be seen in the following sentences. Visite el Eiffel Tower cuando va a París. Compren una camiseta para mí cuando visita a Granada. Commands for ER-IR verbs are formed the same way, substituting the O of the yo form with an A for usted commands and an for ustedes commands. Examples of this can be seen in the following sentences. Coma una waffle cuando visita a Belgium. Vean a las pinturas en el Museo de Arte. If the verb you are using in the command is reflexive, hook the object pronoun to the end of the verb. An example of this can be seen in this sentence. Lávense las manos antes de preparar la comida. If you want to make the command negative, such as forbidding a certain action, use the same formula for making a regular usted and ustedes command and add the word no before the verb. If the verb you are using is reflexive, the object pronoun must go before the commanding verb. No se vayan al castillo. Two commands are very similar to usted and ustedes commands, except with a more informal tone. To form a to command directed towards one person using an AR verb, simply conjugate it to its original usted form, then substitute the original ending with a. ER and IR verbs also follow the same pattern, using an e in place of the usted ending. Examples of this can be seen in these sentences. Bebe tu café muy rápido. Necesita caminar con tus amigos. If a verb is reflexive, hook the object pronoun to the end of the verb. Dime las direcciones al hotel. To create a negative to command, conjugate all verbs to their normal usted form and change the ending to s for AR verbs and as for ER and IR verbs. If the verb being used is reflexive, add the object pronoun before the verb. No te quedas cerca del río. Nosotros commands can be used to make suggestions where the speaker includes themselves and others. To create a nosotros command, use the first person plural form of the present subjunctive. Typically, this type of command is used in the form of vamos a plus the infinitive form of the verb being expressed. An example is vamos a oler las rosas. The verb irse undergoes a unique change when it is used in a nosotros command. In an affirmative command, vámonos would be used, and in a negative command, vayamos would be used. An example is, vámonos a la costa. Another example, no nos vayamos del castillo. To create a negative nosotros command, place the word no in front of the conjugated verb. An example, no vamos al jardín. If the verb being used is reflexive, hook the object pronoun to the end of the conjugated verb and add an accent to retain the original stress. And when the object pronoun nos or se are attached to a nosotros command, the final s is dropped. Example, laventémonos tarde. When a negative nosotros command uses a reflexive verb, the object pronoun comes before the verb. An example, no lo compremos. One function of the present subjunctive tense is that it can be paired with verbs of will and influence to express what someone wants other people to do. To create a sentence, conjugate a verb that expresses will into the present subjunctive form along with the item or action the speaker wishes to influence. Remember that the verb prohibir carries an accent in all conjugation forms except the nosotros. An example of this is, les recomiendo que pasean en el parque. Many times these verbs of influence are accompanied by impersonal expressions such as es importante que, es necesario que, es mejor que, y es urgente que to add emphasis. An example of this is es necesario que vayas a la iglesia. When crafting expressions of will and influence, the infinitive of a verb is used if there is no change to the subject. An example of this is quiero bucear en el Océano Pacífico. A second way that the present subjunctive tense can also be used is to express emotions. When the main clause of a sentence, which is typically a person, expresses an emotion, it is reflected by conjugating the subordinate clause in the subjunctive tense. There are specific verbs of emotion that are used to reflect the feelings of the main clause. An example is le sorprende que la Mona Lisa sea tan pequeña. The term ojalá que is always followed with the verb conjugated in the present subjunctive tense, with the que following the ojalá being optional. An example of this is ojalá que vengan a la casa pronto. After the verb of emotion has been conjugated into the present subjunctive, keep verbs in the infinitive form if there is no change in the subject. An example is me gusta ver estatuas históricas. The third use of the present subjunctive tense is that it can be used to express doubt, denial, and disbelief. Similar to expressing emotions, the subordinate clause is conjugated into the present subjunctive tense when the main clause reflects uncertainty. There are specific expressions of doubt and disbelief that are used to reflect the feelings of the main clause. Some examples include duro que llueva en la playa, no creo que haya ninguna ciudad mejor que Barcelona, es posible que el agua esté limpio. The terms quizás and tal vez can also be used to show uncertain possibility and are typically followed by the subjunctive. Examples include quizás limpiemos el río, tal vez aprenda otros países. However, main clauses that convey certainty do not use the subjunctive clause, but instead have verbs that stay in the indicative form. An example of this is es obvio que Poland es un país bonito. The fourth use of the present subjunctive tense is when conjunctions are used to connect clauses. These types of sentences normally require the subjunctive tense on verbs that come after the conjunction. An example of this is voy a llevar un gorro en caso que haga sol. However, these conjunctions use the present subjunctive tense in the subordinate clause if the main clause expresses a future action. An example is vamos a ver al arte de Francia cuando lleguemos en el país. Also, the indicative can be used if the verb in the main clause represents a habitual action, a past action, or follows prepositions such as antes de, para, and sin when there's no change to the subject. An example of this is salimos tan pronto como vea el edificio. The final use of the present subjunctive tense is to indicate the uncertain existence of a person or object in adjective clauses. An example is busco un lugar que tenga un lago. This is in contrast to the use of the indicative in an adjective clause where certainty exists. However, the response to the initial indication to the indefinite person or object uses the indicative tense. An example, no hay un lago que está cerca de aquí. When a person's existence is not known, the personal a is not used, but when alguien and nadie are used as direct objects, they are preceded by the personal a. These sentences follow this rule. Necesito un guía que sepa la ciudad. No conozco a nadie que puede dar un tour. When describing actions of the past, verbs are conjugated into the past participle. For AR verbs, the ending is dropped and auto is added to the stem. For ER and IR verbs, the ending is dropped and ido is added to the stem. Verbs whose stem end with an a, e, or o have an accent mark over the I of the ito ending. To create a sentence using the past participle as an adjective, the verb estar is used to describe the condition or state that results from the action, and this verb must match amount and gender. Silvia ya está bailado. There are many irregular past participles, with nearly all of them ending in to. The future tense is used to describe events that will occur in the future. To create a verb that expresses the future, take the following endings and hook them onto the infinitive form of the verb. All of the future tense endings have a written accent except for the nosotros form. An example, estudiare la historia del Holocaust. If a sentence uses a conjunction of time, such as cuando, después de que, en cuanto, hasta que, or tan pronto como, the future may be used as a main clause if it follows the conjunction. An example is, Cuando cerras la puerta, comeremos. Although the future tense in Spanish does not require the auxiliary verbs will or shall, querer plus an infinitive verb can be used to determine someone's willingness to do something. An example is, ¿Quieres tomar una foto de mí? The future tense is also used to express concepts such as I wonder, I bet, must be, may, might, and probably. This conveys conjecture about the present conditions, events, or actions through the future of probability. Mis gafas del sol estarán en mi bolsa. Lastly, there are many irregular verbs that have irregular stems in the future tense. To create these words, hook the appropriate ending onto the irregular stem. An example is, Yo tendré muchos recuerdos de mi viaje a Europa.